So one time ago, there was one man named Jesus, and he was in the house preaching, and there was one man that can't stand up and walk. So they let him lay down to a bed, and they broke the roof.
Yes.
Yes. So Jesus sit down, and then he said his sins are forgiven. But when the Pharisees and Sadducees heard that, they said only God can forgive sins. And then Jesus said that Jesus can forgive sins too. Yes. So Jesus asked him to get up and walk and carry his bag. So he stand up, and then he can walk. Yes. And after that, Jesus went up to the mountain to preach to all the people. But one day all of the people were hungry. But one of his disciples said, "There's one boy who have some 5 loaves of fish and 2 bread." But his disciples thought that would not work. But Jesus prayed for it and broke it in half, and he shared with all the people.
Wow.
Yes. And just saved some of it for later in all the baskets. Yes. And after that, Jesus was walking with his disciples, and then Jesus saw one man that got no money, and he was blind and he can't see. So Jesus saw some sand onto the ground, and he spit on the sand and turned it into mud, and he wiped it onto his eyes, and he carried him to the pond. So he put some water onto his eyes, and then he can see.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice.
But after that, he asked someone. When the Pharisees noticed, they take him out of the palace because they don't know who healed him. And the man don't know who healed him because he can't see him. Yes. And so they took him out of the palace and threw him onto the ground. And one time, and after that, Jesus was in the temple with his friends. But one day, there were people selling in there and eating in there and having a party in there. And they were also fighting over some birds in the palace. And then Jesus have tried destroying the temple, and he threw all the money onto the ground, and he said take all of it out because he was mad.
Why did he mad?
Because that was not a temple, that was a church, and we don't sell things in the church, and we don't eat in church. And when the Pharisees and Sadducees heard that, he asked them to what? And he said, and those Sadducees said, "What is the meaning of this?" And then Jesus said, "What he's doing is destroying the temple." But one of the Sadducees said, "It take long for building this temple." Yes, and he says, stop ruining his day. Yes, and then Jesus was on one boat, and then And then no, and his disciples went to catch some fish, and Jesus would stay on to the mountain and play. Yes, but there was a storm there, and then there saw Jesus, and Jesus was walking in the water, and he didn't fall in there. Yes, but he asked Peter to come, but Peter can't walk in water, so he was drowning, but Jesus saved him. Yeah. And then they went fishing again, and Jesus was sweeping in the boat. And then there was a storm. And one of his disciples wake up Jesus, and Jesus stand up onto the boat, and Satan was the one who made the storm. Yes, and then Jesus said, I rebuke you. And then he said, be still, and the water, and it made Satan fall into the sea.
Amen.
Yes.
Amen.
Yes. And after that, Jesus was in one house, and there was one lady.
Go ahead.
And then there was one lady who was washing his feet with some expensive oil, and she braked it. And then when Judas saw that, Judas said, "Stop that woman! You are wasting expensive oil." And then Jesus said, "Leave her alone, because she's just washing my feet." And that's what Jesus said. And it made Judas really mad. So Jesus went into the temple again. And then Judas had paid for $20 so he can sell Jesus. So Jesus and his disciples were in one house eating some food. And then Jesus said and Jesus broke the bread in half, and he said, "This bread is my body, that which is given from you." And Jesus said, "This wine is my blood." And he said, "This cup is the covenant." Yes.
Amen.
Yes. And then after that, Jesus said, "One of you will arrest me." And Jesus said, "The one that's sitting on the table is Judas," but he didn't ask his disciples. And his disciples don't know who was doing that. And then it made Judas really mad, so Judas came out of the house. And after that, Jesus said that when the rooster crows, you will deny me, Peter.
Wow.
Yes. So after that, Jesus asked them to go and play outside with him. But they were so tired, so they slipped onto the ground. And Jesus found one big flat rock, and he played alone at night. But Judas and the soldiers were approaching, and then Judas said that one of those soldiers said, "Which one? It is Jesus." And Jesus said, "Who is it that you're looking for?" And those soldiers said, Jesus. And the soldiers said, "Jesus of Nazareth." But when Peter heard that, Peter got so mad, and Simon Peter have cut off one of the guard's ear. But Jesus healed his ear, and his ear was back on. And then Jesus said, "Put down your sword." And then they took Jesus. And then Mary was approaching, and Mary was sad what happened to Jesus. And then they pushed Jesus onto the ground, and they beat him and spit on him.
Wow.
And they took off his clothes. And then they put one big
We have to finish it.
and then
The first mistake, can't turn the button. Continue, sorry.
and then they put one big wooden cross on his back that looked like a T. And then Jesus walked, and Jesus went and go with her.
We might have to delete it.
No!
It's okay. No,
And
continue.
Jesus went and go with her. And Jesus went and go with her with the cross, and then they put the cross onto the ground and put Jesus on the ground onto the cross, and they nailed his hands and his feet. So they pushed Jesus up the sky, and then they took the ropes down, and they put some two criminals beside him. And then Jesus said that he is thirsty. So one of those soldiers said, "Give him water." And the other soldier said that he got sour wine. So Jesus will know that is why. But Jesus knew it was wine and Jesus knew it, and that was not wine, it was vinegar. And then they put some vinegar onto those sponge, and Jesus didn't drink the vinegar because he knew it was vinegar, because vinegar got one bad smell, and Jesus knew everything. And then Jesus said, "It is finished." And then he put his head down, and then he's already dead.
Okay, good.
So they took their spear and they punched his side,
Yes.
and blood and water came out. And
Good.
blood and water came out, and then they broke the criminals' legs, so they won't walk anymore.
Wow.
And Judas was not there because Judas was feel guilty of Jesus, so he hanged himself onto a tree, and
Amen.
Judas died.
Wow.
So they took Jesus off the cross, and then they buried, and then there was one man named Joseph, and it was one different Joseph.
Amen.
And Joseph said he wants to give him a grave, so they buried him in a tomb, and then they put some cloth on it, and there was one big stone there, and they put some guards there so no one will get in. So after that, the tomb was shaking, and then one angel had pushed the stone away, and then those soldiers were about to pass out because they saw the angel, so they fainted.
Okay.
Yes. And then Mary Magdalene was surprised when Jesus was gone, and they thought that they took Jesus to kill him.
Wow.
Yes. And then there were two angels in there.
Alright.
And then they said, "Woman, why are you crying?" And and Mary Magdalene said that Jesus was gone. But when Mary Magdalene saw one man there, Mary Magdalene thought that he was the gardener. But when he saw him in the white, no,
Yes.
but when she saw him in the white, she knew it was Jesus.
Wow.
And Jesus was alive again.
Amen.
And then after that, Jesus was in, and Jesus' disciples were in the house eating some food. But when they heard Jesus' voice, they said, "Be still."
Amen.
Yes, and then Jesus' disciples went go fishing, and then Jesus was not there, but they catch no fish wrong.
Right.
And then Jesus and when they saw someone back dry land, and they don't know who it is, and Jesus said, "Cast stone net at the other side of the boat."
Yes.
Yes. And they caught so many fish.
Wow.
But when they heard Jesus' voice, they knew that it was Jesus. So Jesus swam in the water and knew that it was Jesus. And some people call him a prophet, and he can do miracles. And some people call him teacher.
Yes.
And then Jesus said, "Simon
Yes.
Peter, son of Joen,
Wow.
do you love me?" And then Jesus said, "Yes, you know that I love you."
Wow.
And then Jesus said, "To feed my sheep."
Wow.
Yes. But Jesus said the same thing 4 times.
Right.
Because Peter denied Jesus. And then after that, Jesus and his disciples went up to the mountain, and he asked him to go to Samaria and Judea, and I'll send you a helper soon. And
Yes.
and he also asked him to do many miracles. And Jesus rose up to the sky when one big cloud was blocking it. So Jesus rose up to heaven. And 2 men wearing white clothes appeared, and they said,
Yes.
"Why are you here?" And they
Right.
also said, "Jesus have rose up heaven, so you can go home."
Okay.
The end.
Amen. Good job.
Good job. Good